Welcome, James Tyrrell.
Yep.
Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Tyrrell, but it doesn't.
Tyrrell?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm bilingual, so I fucking up a lot. But welcome to the Left Brain, Right Brain podcast.
Yep, cool.
We're in RMIT, which is my old stomping grounds, which means a lot to me. A lot of this area around is ungentrified.
Yeah.
Like the building is still what it probably was a long time ago. Have you sketched RMIT before?
I haven't, but I've done not RMIT. I did one for Melbourne Uni for their 150th anniversary. I should know it straight.
Oh, so they commissioned you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did you sketch specifically? Like which area?
Geez, what was the name of the hall? I'd have to probably dig it up.
So I know the area quite well.
Yeah.
Very different vibe to
it
RMIT.
is.
Like,
it is. Yeah. This building's fantastic, though.
It's like an Art Deco thing going on.
Yeah.
It's also like cathedrals as well that have been turned into a university.
It's all, I suppose, because when you look at them all, they're all a bit hickledy-pickledy. You know, there's that one style, and then 20 years later they built that, so that was in the current style, and then, you know, so you end up with all this perfect patchwork of...
Yeah, it's collage of culture and times.
Yeah.
I always think it's just so underrated because everyone's just like RMIT, the city uni.
Yeah.
And it is, but like nobody's like actually filming documentaries about the architecture here because it's insane.
Yeah.
It's something you would see in like New York maybe.
Part of the problem as well, like this building's probably streamlined and man, most of it got doors, you know, like it just doesn't carry any sort of, same with brutalist stuff in Melbourne. It just doesn't get the love it deserves. And then, you know, and they say, well, so what's remarkable about it, or who was the architect? And if it wasn't a particular architect, then what are we keeping it for, you know?
Especially brutalism, it doesn't really survive in the new way of architecture here.
No.
I'm trying to think of what are good examples of brutalism still here. I would say some of the car parks in Carlton are really cool.
Yeah.
Maybe even like the projects in a way. I guess they are brutalist.
Yeah. I had some friends and I did a quick illustration to try and save the paper mill. There was the one with the big chimney up in Elphington.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
And, you know, I think it was one of the first, I think it's Australia's first curtain glass building, I think it was. So,
are you talking about the one that's next to the road? And I know Pam the Bird, the graffiti at the top of it?
No. Further up to Elphington and the Chandler Highway.
Okay,
there was the paper mill there, the APM, and it had a massive chimney and all that, smokestack and all that, and it was really cool. It was like late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah.
And they could have done anything with it, and they didn't. And, you know, they tried to get it protected, and it didn't happen.
So this is something I want to ask. Like, I've been to San Francisco and a few other places abroad, and Netherlands as well. They do heritage list quite heavily.
Yeah.
Is Melbourne doing that, or does Melbourne not give a shit?
I don't think they care, mate.
No, because I've seen so much good stuff go. Even Fitzroy, right?
Yeah.
It used to be ungentrified. Is now turning into some dining bistro place.
Yeah, it's just... and then, you know, domestically, the houses... They just carry no weight at all. And even now, I think it's used to, you know, a high-end architect or a famous architect or a prime minister or so, they used to save it, and even that doesn't, you know, if a prime minister was born there or something, that doesn't carry any weight anymore. You know?
No, it's a real shame because there is such an atmosphere to these places.
Yeah.
And even in my, my memory of what it was like to party before COVID, there would be all these abandoned churches, abandoned buildings. I know even there was a big rave that happened near my house in Port Melbourne at the abandoned, it wasn't the Herald Sun, but it was the abandoned, it might be the Age or the Herald Sun right before they tore it down. Yeah. And there's this mystique about these places that I guess if you're not drawing them or no one's photographing them, then they're gone and that's it. Like,
it's nuts. Like sometimes I just scour everything I can.
Yeah.
Just, you know, and I spend days on the State Library's archive, you know, and sometimes you can't search the building because you either didn't know the name of the building or you didn't know the address. And even when I drew that tram terminal out on Swan Street with the CUB, there was only a handful of photos of that. Not exactly what I was after, but then what I start doing is I'll search Moomba Parade, and by doing that, you get those buildings in the background.
Right.
So, because no one took photos of the building; it's just a factory. What am I taking? But by default.
That's so smart, actually.
Yeah, so I'll say, you know, Moomba Parade 1975, and next thing you know, you've got this, you know, all these kids marching down the street, but you've got this building in the background, and that's that's how I sort of scraped that.
It's so interesting though, like how you would have to look into a festival, like an old festival. It's like, well, that's where the budget's going.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
How much does people spend on like New Year's celebrations?
Yeah.
And stuff like
Man,
like,
that.
Obviously, they're going to document it.
Yeah. So, well, the Moon Parade was massive. Yeah. You know, back in the 70s. There's no weekend. There was only Saturday football.
Yeah.
Sunday shops were closed, so all that sort of stuff was huge.
Yeah.
And so next time, anytime I try to find something, I'll do a sort of a different search, and then something will pop up, and it might just be blurry in the background or something like that.
So there is an element of imagination that comes into play too.
Sort of. If it doesn't, I do a lot of it from memory. Like as a child, I have these.
I was going to ask you about that.
I have these really clear memories, and some, like I did one of the Allen's neon sign where the Allen's factory was, and mate, I sat on that platform as a kid hundreds of times, and there was no iPhones and there was no anything, there was nothing to occupy, and you had this massive neon sign flicking away, and it took about 30 or 40 seconds to go through its whole loop. And you're on this train station, and there's a moat between me and this lolly factory. You just be mesmerised, and there was nowhere else to look. Like there's no digital screens to tell you what time your train's coming. So there's just nowhere else to look, and that's how they captured a lot of the sort of stuff. Because you weren't on an iPad or a phone. So
you're single-handedly, like what you're telling me, you're single-handedly fighting against gentrification.
Yeah, well, that's sort of it. Yeah, sometimes I sort of see it as a sort of a passive protest, and
absolutely.
And there's always, I try to be, like I said, I take a lot of time writing the posts up, and I do the best I can. I type one, with my finger by finger sort of thing, but I always emphasise who was at fault for this, and it's usually the councils are quick to let's celebrate Melbourne, but mate, most of those rubber stamped.
Oh yeah.
A lot of this as well, They
say that, but, you look around and it's all just the same shit.
It is
soulless, copy paste, houses, and
and so a lot of the stuff that I've drawn that's gone, mate. You guys rubber stamped it, and then people say, well, the VCAT wasn't around. There was no process to stop them, and the developer, if you owned it, you do what you like with it, and so there's no. But they're really slack with heritage protection and stuff, and they still are. I follow half a dozen guys here in Melbourne, and they're saying, mate, this isn't protected, and it's just nuts, and no one wants to buy anything protected because then I can't redevelop it, or I can't renovate it, or any of that. So
it is interesting because even like I'm 29, and my life, like I've gravitated towards these more old school places. Like, I'm from Argentina, which I guess a lot of it is technically heritage listed, even though it's gigantic buildings. But I guess they don't really, a lot of it don't have the money to actually revitalize that city, so it stays the way it used to look.
The dumb part, and you go to different cities around the world, and it's the way they've retained a lot of their buildings.
Netherlands.
And the heartbreaking bit is like mid 1800s. This was the richest city in the world.
Yeah, Melbourne.
Like with the gold rush.
Right.
And so a lot of the money and the taxes obviously went back to England, the motherland. So we didn't retain a lot. But, you go to Bendigo and Ballarat and see those buildings, and they were all through Melbourne, and just gold rush money. And it's like we didn't build an underground tunnel like every other city had with it. So we ended up building all these beautiful buildings and trashed them anyway. So we ended up with the underground or the buildings.
Yeah.
And you look at, because one of the biggest killers was getting the 56 Olympics, and they were desperate to modernise the place, and
spruce it up for the world,
man. And there's there's a fantastic doco, The Lost Melbourne, I think it's called, and he covered a lot of that. Cinemas and all that were just bulldozed, and and I think the bit that's probably worse now is when you see something demo and I go, mate, when you look at, I watched that doco a few times, and I got the book, and And you go, oh, well, you know, we're a bit naive back then and we didn't know what we had. But when you see something still getting knocked down, and you go, well, you know, we don't have the excuse anymore. And it's solely, you know, incompetence, corruption, or greed. There's no other...
No. No, and I think you need to know, like, especially with a place like Melbourne that hasn't really been around for that long.
Yeah.
You know? Like, we don't have as long of a history as any other place, or as most places. And it's like, for example, when I was in Berlin, I wasn't able to connect to it the way that it had been hyped up to me all my life. And so what I did was look up Iggy Pop documentaries and cave documentaries and just see the architecture and see the buildings. And you can still go out to those places. Granted, they're not the same as they used to be. The interior is different. But they preserve the actual shell of what it is, and they preserve the atmosphere.
And you're talking cities that were blanket bombed. And
you're talking a city that was literally 80%, I think, recreated.
Still managed to, you know, have what they've got. And they you know, even when they do demolish a 4-story building, they never put a 4-story building back. That's a 40-story building. And so, you know, it's all about the airspace above it. And whereas you go to those European cities, like we were in Tokyo 18 months ago, and they don't come, you know, higher than, you know, Skytree or whatever it's called. The buildings go to as far to the horizon. Yeah. But you don't have to go out too far, and they're just back to 2 and 3 and 4 stories high. Like,
as soon as you move out of like the central area, even in Osaka and in Kyoto, which I've been to as well, you get that feel of what it actually is like.
Yeah, Kyoto's I love
Kyoto's
Kyoto. Amazing. If I could run away to Kyoto, that's where I'd go. But
I loved it there.
Yeah, it's you go on that older side, and there's nothing higher than probably 3 stories.
Yeah, it's just amazing the way it is. It doesn't have to be modern. It doesn't have to be gentrified or refurbished. It's fine how it is. Like, some things aren't... This need that also Melbourne has with constant construction. Yeah. Like, I've never seen Melbourne fully built. It's always... There's always something. The same highway is always getting rebuilt. Yeah,
that's... And, you know, wherever you live... and we've got forever. They'll drop one house and start building townhouses. Yeah. And I think that, I don't know if the Vic Roads or the councils make them, but it seems like they must be able to do 6 at once, so that as soon as one's finished, the next one starts. Yeah. And it's just, this is never going to end. I don't see... It's not... There's no point where you go, mate, so the building's... The city's finished now. We can all sort of just kick back and...
I've always wondered that my entire time living here. I've always wondered if there's going to be a point where you can just be like, cool, you know, let's use the money for something else now.
I don't see it.
Don't get me wrong. I think there is a place now that they're building for people who are homeless. Yeah. I can't remember the name of the building, but it's like the one good example I've seen where they're like, oh, this is the place where you can live, and it's like a comfortable place. It's not like a grotty place. It's not like yesterday. This is a bit of a tangent, but I went to the place where Nick Cave's son passed away from overdose, Coburg Motor Inn, which I don't know if you've ever sketched or...
No, I haven't.
But you know about, obviously.
Yeah, I grew up in at that way as a kid, and... Is that the one on...
It's on, what's it called? Olsen or Elizabeth? It's next to... The tram.
I
don't think it's around anymore. Vice does have some documentaries on it.
Yeah, it's not the one... There wasn't one... I watched a doco on one not long ago, and... I'm certain it was close to the cemetery, like Sydney Road. Yeah.
I think it's a similar one.
Right. Well,
this one was notorious. It had 1-star reviews.
I'm guessing there's not that many
shootings.
So that's the one. Yeah, and she's pretty down and out, that one.
It's gone now. It's an urban exploration zone. Right. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
From what I saw, but like there's still elements of like danger in Melbourne, obviously. Yeah. But that place is like, you know, what it would have felt like maybe 15 years ago. Yeah. I mean, people who like were leaving prisons, like Nick Cave's son had just been out of prison and then put into there. Yeah. And that's where he overdosed. So.
Yeah, which is not, you know, it doesn't surprise anyone though. But it's, you know, it's funny how they were managed to be able to house all the homeless during COVID. Yeah. Find them a hotel room and all that. But then once...
Yeah. Well, the government was directly like sending people there. But then there were also families who were traveling who just got put there. Yeah. So they would give the place like 1-star reviews. And the guy who was owning it was trying to like help all these people.
So did you watch that doco? Yeah. Yeah, it's 45
it's minutes. It's incredible because like, you know, like... You go out, especially as a young person, you go out and you take so much for granted. Yeah. You just don't understand, like, you just don't have the knowledge to understand what this place was built on.
Yeah.
You know, and what that now defunct building used to represent. Which, again, going back to what you do is why I think it's so important.
I follow, I think it's called, on Instagram, I think it's called Dead Motels. And it's basically that they sort of do, they'll find that a motel that was like, and then they'll dig out the old photos in its heyday.
Yeah.
And it's just this heartbreak. It's the stuff I draw. Like, I just think, you know, like, look what, this was amazing, you know, and the poolside and cabana and all that sort of thing. And then it's just, like, it looks like Chernobyl half the time. Some of those motels, you know.
Yeah. No, I think the way that you paint is very what would the word be? It's very honorable. Like, you're definitely paying respect to these buildings. Like, there's other ways you could paint them that might be less favorable, but I feel like I don't know exactly what the style is. It feels retro-futuristic, but it can't be because this is what they actually looked like.
Yeah,
but you have that vibe.
I think sometimes I think, you know, I try to draw. Oh, obviously you try to draw the best of your ability, and sometimes I do think, and it was not unusual old Art Deco posters, and the buildings were drawn much bigger than they really were, and, you know, lights and all that. But I do try to, I suppose, show it in its best light, you know, and I don't know, maybe like a taxidermist does, you know, and they just, you know,
trying to recreate it as best as you can.
Yeah, and
the feeling, right? The atmosphere.
Honor that building, like that was a hotel that people loved or something, you know, and it deserved better than that, you know, and I think it was like one of the first ones I ever illustrated, and it was the driver for this was the United Kingdom Hotel in Clifton Hill, and with McDonald's, and I used to drive past it, and I used to just think, so I get it, you know, McDonald's bought it and they own it and says to do as they choose, and that had a beautiful interior, and they gutted that like a fish, but I used to just go past, and I would just find it jarring. I go, mate, really? Like, a building, and I get that you got the right to put the signage on it, but can't we do something a bit better than that?
You're talking about the one with the McDonald's?
Yeah.
Classic Clifton
And I thought,
Hill.
mate, one day I'm going to draw that, and I'm going to draw it detoxified and just take everything off it. And then I drew, and it wasn't a detailed illustration. It was just something I was just like a doodle, and I think, mate, I just did it. And everyone goes, oh, man, I've never seen it without the signage, and no one had. And it sort of stemmed from that, and I sort of just stripped all the white noise around it, you know, and that's like the one I did of city headers, and the shop's still there, and I follow some fantastic photographers in Melbourne, and yet they're not able to take any good photos because there's all this white noise in the way, and there's signs and there's barriers, and
they've made it as difficult as it can be to preserve.
And so you could have the best photographer in Melbourne and say, shoot me something beautiful at this shop, and it's not doable because there's just so much garbage in the way, and, you know, so that's sort of my motive. So I'm sort of stuck between trying to recapture it, do something that it can't be photographed, so it's got to be drawn. And yeah, so I just try to recapture it in what I probably imagine it as it's in its heyday. You know, that shop's been trading for 100 years, but that was sort of about when I probably thought that's, you know, in its when it had neon and that whole jazz period of, you know, marvelous Melbourne, you know,
which I've never experienced.
No, and I think you know, like, I reckon I think just the world changed, but, you know, it was probably up until maybe the mid-'80s, and then that's when the dynamic of the city changed, and I think that was Sunday trading begun, and we started to open up, you know, football was just Saturday afternoon, 12 teams, 6 games, out in 6 suburbs sort of thing, and then, so that got expanded, and we started the fabric of Melbourne started to fray a bit, and it became a global city, I suppose, but 24 hours, 7-Elevens and all that, and you start to lose and so I think I try to capture anything probably mid-'80s, you know, I think that's when it started to change. So if you're not at that age, and my kid's not, and just,
I'm 96, so.
Yeah, it just doesn't compute with my kid, like she'll go, my God, and they knock that down, but that's as far as she can go with it, because she just doesn't
No, but I really feel it. A lot of my friends are artists and creatives, and I reckon like creatives feel it as well, because you need the spaces. A lot of the I think Virginia Woolf used to write about it a lot, like a room of one's own, like having a space to make art. You can go into Andy Warhol's factory and start looking at those places. New York and Brooklyn especially, for like Basquiat, and like the role of a building, the role of a studio, the role of an institution. Going to Clifton Hill music, what was it called? Clifton Hill Community Centre, that all the avant-garde musicians used to play in. We don't have that, you know. We don't have any of these spaces. So when we go out to Fitzroy and we go out to Northcote, now it's Northcote and Thornbury. It's always getting pushed further north. Until I don't think there's going to be much more left to push, because there's not a whole lot of suburbia inner cityness after that. Which is unfortunate, but we definitely feel that nostalgia, which made going to the Tote, you know, so much fun, and still so much fun, because that place is technically a heritage building by default. I mean, it got saved by the people.
So I chipped in some illustrations to help them with that.
Oh, great. Of the Tote?
Yeah, there's a large one in the front bar.
Fucking there.
And you know, like you could argue, and you know, its crime was it's not a beautiful pub. So you go to all the other ones, and you know, like the Bendigo and all that, they're quite ornate, and the Totes, you know, is what it is. But it's more than four walls, and you think, mate, every band that's ever played there, and the developers just sort of, it's a corner block, you know, high exposure, and it's just four walls. And you know, mate, this little box is more than four walls. This has got, you know, and when I contacted Shane about that, and I said, mate, I'd be happy to illustrate the thing for you to help you And I said, man, I'll be honest, I haven't been in there for 10 years, but I said between 18 and 30, I lived in that place.
Yeah, man. I played my first show there ever with my band.
So when the minute I felt, mate, they're going to knock this down, and there was no way they were going to save it. Like, if that didn't stay as a pub, it was not pretty enough to retain. Like, it was just, you know, like you look at it, it's bare bones. It's
if you really think about it, because it's hard to detach the nostalgia factor, like the modern day nostalgia factor. But yeah, you're right. The band room is just a band room.
Yeah.
The garden is just a garden.
Yeah.
It's more the sum of its parts. It's actually more of the fabric of the building itself.
Yeah.
The bands on the side of it.
And it's like a castle, you know, like it's more than it's the house. It's a home, you know, and it could be just four walls, but it was more than that. And there's a lot of other pubs that battle the same thing, and you know, Melbourne, you know, like the cost of living, the way things are at the moment. But you know, like everyone threw everything at saving the Tote, and I thought, mate, there's probably 10 others that need the same.
Well, the Gasso just closed down.
I know, and I go, mate, there's only
beautiful Art Deco venue with lots of memories. Gone. And they're all gonna keep going. It's weird because Albanese is. I don't know, he likes Radio Birdman and shit.
Yeah, well,
you would expect that a guy who wears...
Well, for photo opportunities.
Yeah, possibly. That's exactly what I'm fucking saying. Yeah. But, you know, I mean, nobody really wants to go there. The Tote, like, is just a place that I had the band Private Function maybe a few weeks ago.
Yep.
And they just told me all these different stories about the Tote, because we did it in the garden, because one of the person who's in the band works there.
Right. I was going to say, before we set this up, I go, mate, we could probably go and do it.
We honestly probably could. We did it at the Tote because it was like, it was easy. I do volunteer work at PBS. So I was like, we can do it at PBS, we can do it at the Tote, but the Tote makes more sense, more chill, more relaxed. But we were sharing stories. I told them a story of mine that isn't like Tote canon, but I guess it is now, like playing a gig at Cherry Bar, and we saw a person jump so hard during our set they went both feet through the floorboards. Somebody stole the floorboard, the plank of wood, lost it in the Tote garden. So now a piece of Cherry lives in the Tote. So there's heaps of stuff like that, like the dungeon in the Tote that they have. Used to be like a gay bar upstairs. There's so many stories, and once you replace that with nothing, we have nothing to share. There's no history anymore. Modern history too.
That's, you know, and I did an illustration of St. Moritz down in St Kilda, and that was demolished in the early 90s. I actually brought some cards to show you. And St. Moritz was a skate rink, and then it became a sort of place where bands were playing, and there was an Earl's Court next door, and there was the palace over the road, and they all mysteriously burnt down. It's amazing for a suburb that's so close. Yeah, for a suburb that's so close to the water, we seem to have a lot of fires.
Yeah.
But they were, and so, you know, and I illustrated the Greyhound they demoed that for no reason. Like, I drove past there the other day, and they still haven't built anything on it, though. So they just hurry up and demo it before it gets any sort of heritage listing. And that's been gone probably now for 7 or 8 years. And that was a great pub. And that was sort of like, and I think that's what everyone knew that the tote was looking down the barrel at, because they knew that if it gets anywhere like the Greyhound, it's gone and it won't come back.
It is a rare example of like the community behaving the way the community should.
Yeah.
There's not many examples of that.
Mate, that drew on a lot of people, and they did a great job, and scratched out as much media as they could.
They put a lot on the line.
Yeah, and all done on spell of an oily rag. But I did say at the time, I think the people have only got one tote in them, because the next one's going to come along, and like I said, the gasometer or something.
That's gone, and they also deserve to live.
As much and they all do. Most of them do.
They all do.
But there's only so much.
People just don't have that connection to the venues that they did pre-COVID.
No, they don't.
The totes are different. The tote is just like an institution, basically. So it's a pub, but if you look up on the roof, they've got all the, like you said, your artwork's there as well, but they've got how many years? 40, 50 years. All the bands that influenced all the bands who are currently playing are there. They played the walls. So that's that idea of what gets saved and what doesn't, and it comes down to the almighty dollar, and I don't see too many councils or too many people fighting to save. Factor. It's a cultural factor, so they're not going to.
It is, and then once you get the next generation, so you might have kids, my kids' age. Well, they're totally detached unless they went to the tote. It's just a building, That's where that's just a building where my dad might have drank a beer at, but it doesn't have the same feeling. I've got Scanlon's football cards from the mid-70s, and I open the book and I'm like an 8-year-old kid again.
Yeah.
And I show her, and they're just bits of cardboard.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing there. I go, now make sure you don't, if I fall off the perch, these are worth money, and they are just bits of cardboard.
It's all about education, and that's what your drawings do.
Well, sort of, and that's sort of what I sort of probably try to do. And sometimes I'll draw, and mate, a lot of the pubs and stuff I'll draw, and mate, I know if I sell 3 of these, and we're talking 90 hours of work, if I sell 3, I'll bear my bum in Burke Street. But I sort of think, mate, if I don't draw it, who's going to?
No one. So that's why I hit you up. I've never seen anyone do this.
And I think, a lot of people won't draw it because there's no commercial value to it. Yeah. So you had to love. I remember when I drew the Carter's Arms in Northcote, I go, mate, I'll probably sell 6 of these, maybe. There's a pub where my uncle used to drink at, and but it's sort of like the pub was better than that. Now it's got Northcote Plaza. It's just horrible. And I go, mate, it was a beautiful old pub, and it would kill it in Northcote now, but it's gone. And I just think, well, I'm just going to take a bullet on this one. I'm just going to draw it, and it'll go on the list. And maybe one day when someone does a search on old pubs, and and that'll come up. And they don't have to buy the print. Why would they want to hang that on their wall? They've never seen the pub.
I mean, the fact that you care means something.
Well,
because
I
you
think
spend so much. How long do you spend on each of these?
It just depends. I don't think. It just depends. Like I just did. Did you see my embassy drink bottle? I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was about 50 hours.
50 down.
But that's still scouring. Trying to find images and.
But what medium are you actually using?
So they all end up digital in the end. So especially because I create most of the fonts myself.
Oh wow.
So generally a lot of the fonts were made up, like they were rendered into the wall of the pub. So I'll recreate that and then use that as the.
Which again, that calligraphy is a whole other story.
Yeah. Well, I did it in the mid-80s. I was a sign writer and a show card writer, so that was what I did. So that's not a big deal for me to create fonts and stuff. But there's a ton of different reasons, and I get asked about, what's your process, and I said, mate, to be honest with you, because I don't know what I'm working from yet and what photos I can find and what photos I can take of my own.
Yeah.
I said, it's like watching a sausage being made, mate. I just, it's pretty, I don't even, and sometimes I get to a point where I don't even know how I've got to where I am. I've just, it's not
There's
like
a mystical quality to these things.
It's just like, I don't know, there's a gap there between, I know where I've started, and then there's a gap of about 60 hours, and it always, I get to about the 70% mark, and I'm done. I can't do this. I'm out of love with it, or it's not working, or there was this really difficult bit that I still haven't worked out how I'm going to do now, and now we're at that point. How are you going to do it? And it might be reflections on glass that are really hard to do and stuff, or capture, and yeah, I keep putting. I'm at that point now. I said, right, so you got to finish this thing now, and man, that last 20% just kills me. And I've illustrated stuff, and it's taken me 12 months to post it, and I've just put it away. I can't even look at it, and I'm supposed to love the thing, and it's like I've almost got to fall back in love with it again, and so I don't.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
I don't pull it out till I go, and my heart flutters again. I go, oh, that's right. That's actually not too bad. But yeah, in that point, I get to the point, mate, if I look at that thing one more time, or I've got it right and we've proofed it 50 times, I can't even look. And I'm laying 6 of them across. I can't even see the difference. I got my partner, my kid, I've pinned them on the wall, mate. Can you tell me which one's wrong? I can't even see what's wrong with it now. Something's not right, but I don't know what it is.
Well, lots of chefs eat McDonald's. They don't eat their own meals. Yeah. It's the same with art. I mean, I just finished my second album for my band. I can barely fucking listen to any of it. I spent 12 months with it, longest I've ever spent on anything, and I'm just like, okay, cool. It's not for me. The spiritual process of making it is for me. Yeah,
and then there's the whole hustle of you doing it. I've got to go out and take some more photos and post it on Instagram.
Market it correctly. That's what really sucks the final bit of blood out.
Yeah, and that's why half the time, I'll start drawing something else, and the partner will go, well, why don't you put that one up before you start out? And I guess, mate, that's gone now. I lost interest in that. It's a ADD thing or something, mate. That's out of my life now. I don't even want to look at it. And she goes, well, you've proofed it. It's ready to go. And I go, I just can't even look at it. And sometimes I've had illustrations have sat there for 12 months, and you really should post that one. I can't even look at it. Wow. And it takes, they're all different. It depends how much it tortured me.
Cool.
Yeah. So in the end, I'm happy with most of them. But yeah, there's this point I get this love-hate relationship with the thing, and it's like I just can't. It's like this marathon run, and the finish line keeps moving.
Yeah, for sure. Well, all artists struggle with knowing when to stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
I wanted to go into, there's a few specific buildings I wanted to talk to you about.
Yep.
One of them isn't really a building, but in terms of structures that are worth preserving, not that it's at risk of going away, but you never know. The Keith Haring mural, which is something that we all take for granted.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider sketching that?
No, well, I would never do it without approval.
Because it's an artwork already, right?
Yeah. I would never.
That's graffiti, right? That would be a stance on like graffiti that's there.
Well, I just wouldn't replicate a Keith Haring unless it was approved by that estate.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, so it'd be like me just. Well, maybe I could make a quick buck. I'll just go around and do roans, and I did the old building, and it just happened to have a roan on it, and that's just not how things work. And and the reality is I do these buildings, and there was an architect, and a lot of times I get contacted by the granddaughter, and I'll always send them a print on the house, if they can dig me out, sort of thing, and approach me, but a lot of that's. These are 80, 100-year-old buildings. There is no one to go and ask. You just sort of do it. But yeah, Keith Haring, I get the point. It's on a beautiful building, and you could draw it, and it's got the tote.
Yeah, it's got a tote. It's next to the PBS building. Also, an incredible institution. I forget what it's called. It used to be a school. The
Collingwood Tech.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, incredible fucking building.
So yeah, no problem. And if Collingwood Tech said, mate, could you draw something for us and incorporate that. I still wouldn't without the approval
that's
of...
cool. Yeah, ethical.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, because that particular mural has two stories that are very interesting with it. One of them was that it had the door that kept getting stolen.
Yeah.
And the other one is that the NGV, because I watched I didn't know it was on YouTube, the Keith Haring documentary, where he's like actually painting it. And all the little kids are there and they're just like commenting and shit. And he did commission for the NGV, which would still be there today.
On the glass.
Except some guy threw a rock at it.
Right. Yeah.
And that's gone.
Yeah.
So, like, we wouldn't have the waterfall.
Yeah.
We would have had that.
Yeah.
So,
it's just
that's quite interesting.
The fact that they defaced the wall, I think they tagged all over it or something. And, it's simplistic art. It's not hard to go over it, but it loses the...
I think it's such an important piece for Australia to have international artists from that era. Yeah. To just like coexist with us, to show us, because we're so isolated from everything. Yeah, it's important to have that international vibe, just as it's important to have our own culture too.
I think, and I sometimes wonder where, because we've got all this street art, but geez, man, we've got a lot of graffiti and tagging as well, and I don't know if it's a cultural thing that, you got Hosier Lane, so then it just extends beyond that, and a lot of the tagging's pretty ordinary, but I don't know if that's a cultural thing that's come from,
Melbourne has a particular vibe with graffiti that I haven't seen anywhere else in the world.
No, and
which is interesting. Like, this isn't a graffiti podcast. There are some. Yeah. There's many. Yeah. But being raised in, I guess, like the early 2000s here. Yeah. Hosier Lane, like if you go to Toronto, you go to Quebec or anything, they'll show you their graffiti alleys. Yeah. They got nothing with fucking Hosier. Yeah. And Hosier's always changing, and lately it hasn't been that good. I don't know if it's a generational thing, because like...
It wouldn't surprise me.
Lately, it's always got graffiti. Yeah. The graffiti that's been there currently hasn't super duper been doing it for me, but I remember going back there like 10 years ago. Yeah. And it had some of the wildest pieces. I was even doing graffiti there and doing paste ups there too.
Yeah. I think sometimes, it's like, especially now with AI and stuff, like it's the old school guys probably they got, kids and bills to pay and all that. And then you do sort of think sometimes you see these Hosier Lanes and the minute the council attach themselves to it, like it's a bit of it sort of jumped the shark. Yeah. And you think, man, I think we'll just move on. I think, the minute the council want to be associated, it's a kiss of death. And there's a great episode on Utopia, and it was that same thing. Oh, yeah, that's great. They're trying to get in with the kids. The graffiti scene is mate, if the way they've protected the music scene here is
they've killed us.
Yeah, they've murdered it. If they're going to build it, some horrid development, there's always a piece of art or sculpture at the front. They always sell it off as, they're happy to use art to sell something, or it's got a graffiti wall or a big mural on the side, and they've murdered the music scene here, and they're nothing to help out.
I was at the forum the other day, which I saw that you sketched quite magnificently. I think it's one of my favorite ones of yours. And I was there watching like a more, I guess like a chill kind of rock band. And somebody told me a crazy story that I was wondering if you knew. Probably, arguably the craziest story I've heard attached to any building, about the murderer who used to work there in the 80s. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard the story.
Yeah, that he used to, basically this guy who worked as like the projection guy, murdered people as a serial killer and was dumping the bodies in an abyss on the side of the building. And so now the security guards, when they're like leaving the place, because they don't know if there's bodies still there, they always leave the light on.
Right. I have heard that story.
At the forum?
Yeah, I have heard. I think that might even be in a Wikipedia post. It's an urban myth sort of thing.
An urban myth, yeah. But I was wondering, do you have any like equally crazy stories attached to any particular building?
Oh man. Well, it's only when you, none personally, I don't think. But it's when you do resource and you read up. And you'll go through Wikipedia pages and like a lot of times if I can't find, and this is where I just blow days, not hours, days. If I can't find photos or anything written on it, I'll sit on YouTube and I watch old cop shows where there might be a car scene chase, down Bridge Road, Richmond, and there's just that I freeze it in that moment. Yeah. In that time, you see how life was, and it could have been, Division 4 or something from 1974, and so you learn a few things that, your pubs, I didn't know a pub was ever painted that colour, and it was actually this colour.
That's so true though, because even one of my favourite movies, Mad Max 2, but then Mad Max 1 was shot on a bunch of places that are still the way they were. Melbourne Uni. The Melbourne Uni car park is the, I think where he gets the helicopter or some shit like that, or he talks to the helicopter guy there and gets the car. It's like amazing. You can still go to that place, and actually that's a place that they did touch it up a little bit recently, but you can't do too much because the whole thing will cave in. It's a very particular type of structure. I don't know who the architect was that did the Melbourne Uni car park, but that is an incredible piece of design.
It is pretty cool.
So cool. But yeah.
So I don't know. I don't really have any particulars. So most of what I've drawn, and there's probably hundreds of pics now, but I do have some sort of emotional attachment to them. So it didn't mean I might have been too young to drink in the pub. A lot of them I had drank in, but it could have been one where my uncle drank. There's like this attachment, and I get asked a lot to do commissions, and if I don't feel it, I go, mate, I can't. I couldn't throw 100 hours at something that
you didn't believe in.
No.
I don't think anyone can. That's a lot of time.
And yet it's funny because a lot of times I can be driven by, if I feel it was a travesty that something was demolished, I can get spite and anger can drive me.
Even if you necessarily didn't care about the place.
So it's just to stick it into whoever does this thing. Like I wasn't old enough to remember the Federal Coffee Palace, but everyone knows that it should never have been demolished, and this was just a protest. This is what we could have had.
What was the Federal Coffee Palace?
Oh, no, it's gone.
It's gone. The whole thing's gone.
That was demolished in the mid-70s.
Yeah, because it looks like something out of a dream.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is a legitimate palace.
Yeah.
What was this used for?
Oh, no, it was actually a
hotel?
It was a hotel, became the Federal Hotel, but yeah, it was part of...
Why would they have demolished this? It's like, it's like 12 stories high.
Yeah, and what they built there was...
It's like basically the size of Flinders Street, bigger.
Yeah, taller.
A castle. And what was this in the middle of... Oh, King Street.
Yeah, corner of King.
Wow.
Yeah,
Collins. When did they demolish this?
Mid-70s? Early 70s?
That's crazy. Yeah, nobody... That's so foreign to me to even look at that building because it's so Melbourne.
Yeah.
And it will never exist again.
No. And so a lot of them is just how I sort of remember things as a kid. And like I said, there's no iPads or anything. So a lot of things were probably... And I sometimes think... They're not overly exaggerated. They're probably brighter than they were and all that, but that's the beauty of an illustration. But I do sort of draw them in the way I looked at them as a child, if you know what I mean. Like they're just...
There's some kind of dreamy quality.
Yeah, so there's like a...
Especially this one here. Like this is how I found out about you. There was an advertisement that you put out with the ghost cat. So what's the ghost cat looking at? Yeah.
So have you seen the Oh, you would have seen the post that I put. So
I saw the post. So I've never actually seen.
You haven't walked
the
down
ghost
to the corner.
Cat. No,
right.
Where is it?
So you got to walk down to where are we doing? Corner of Elizabeth Street and Burke Street.
Okay, and it's still there.
Yeah, only the cat is.
Only the cat.
Yeah, but if you where the old post office is.
Right. Yeah.
Cross the road and then look back up, and it's up there above the buildings.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that one gave me very... it reminded me a lot of, like, the Nilex factory one that you also sketched as well.
Yeah.
And that place is, like, hugely significant for me because I went on my first date there. So we snuck into the Nilex factory building.
Right, okay.
And
I'm actually working on another one of those.
It looked like in Batman when, like, the Joker falls into the chemical vat. So I'm pretty sure there was heaps of homeless people still living in the place.
How long ago was that?
This was probably, like... 9 years ago.
Okay, so one thing I noticed because I took some photos, and those, like everything, those silos are heritage listed.
Yeah, that's where we went, the silos.
But I went down there not long ago to have a look, and no matter how, and this is where you give an inch and they take a mile. old photos I've got of it, there was 12 silos, and now there's only 6. So yeah, they're going to get to a point where they'll be down to 1, holding the Nilex sign up. But
we got to enjoy it while it lasts, because it's like quicksand. It's just all kind of disappearing. I mean, I think these for people who, there's no video for this one, but the postcards that you've drawn, that you've given me, like, I think it's actually really important. I'm trying to figure out how to describe this, because I'm very humbled that you've been able to give me these. But like, having these on like your fridge or on your wall, as a Melburnian, where we have difficulty sometimes keeping in touch with our identity in an ever-changing world. Yeah, your works really bring in that like present-day nostalgia factor that kind of reminds you of where you are. So your work is very grounding and meditative in that way. Yeah,
I think, like, I'd like to think it's really important to me that if it comes across that there's integrity in the illustration, and it's not.
And it shows.
And you know, not everything I draw makes a buck, and a lot of them don't. You know, I've drawn, I drew the Dim Sim Factory in Hoddle Street, just because I used to sit in that traffic every day, and I'd stop at those lights and I'd stare at that factory, and I go, man, I'm going to draw that one day. Well, it's not high on the hit list of people wanting to hang a Dim Sim Factory on their wall, but I think, well, I'm drawing it anyway to try and capture. Yeah, sometimes I even think I draw them for myself, like I'm just trying to relive my own youth, and I've got this ability to draw them, so I can't, they're only a vague memory, and then I look at some old blurry photos and I find something good online, but they're not colour, and I go, right, I'm going to turn this into something as I remember it, and then it just happens to be, obviously I'm living in a city of 6 million people, I'm not the only one, like that embassy bottle I drew, I drew that. I go, mate, this was my childhood. My kid that's the ugliest looking bottle I've ever seen. Why would you even bother drawing that? And I said, you wait. People will know this one. And yeah, I can't be the only person in a city that would have been 4 million people back then. And so, yeah, I draw them as I sort of remember. Hopefully other people remember that and go on the same journey, And
a lot of it is, like, some of it is, the fragments of it is still here. So that also helps push, those who don't know. Yeah. As long as you're making them now, as opposed to in, 10 years when they're all gone.
It does help if they're still there and someone can go and see it. But it is a shame when, people go, so we've got to go and see that. I go, mate, you can't go and see that. That was demolished 30 years ago. And I do sort of hope, sometimes I keep thinking that when I post something, I hope tourists don't come here and think they're going to come to Melbourne and see all these buildings.
But you can give them what Melbourne really is through these, just even a packet of these. Like, can people buy these?
Yeah. They sell at the library and all that. But
because these are fantastic. And I think for me, when I go out feeling, again, is so important. I spoke to somebody yesterday who does, very different to you, but she does digital videos that are quite nostalgic and vibrant and whimsical of nature. And so she captures through the collage of sound and video. Yeah. The feeling of nostalgia through these videos. Yeah. It's not that everyone's lived in that particular park or that particular lake, but she gets these communal feelings. And the topic of nostalgia and like studying nostalgia is just so interesting to me, because it is a particular emotion that a lot of people don't talk about.
Oh man, look, I waste so much time on YouTube, and I tell you what, and you're obviously a different age, but I can go and there's people who put together like 90 minutes of TV ads from 1976. And I tell you what, mate, you just hear one after and it just takes you back straight away, like instantly. It's like a smell or a taste or a tune.
No, I agree. You drew a Sunkissed the other day. Yeah. I haven't seen a Sunkissed. Are they even around?
Oh, no.
Can you still get one?
No.
Because I used to have that shit in my canteen.
Yeah.
So, like, and like that was my childhood, man.
Yeah.
That ice cream snack.
Yeah.
There's so many, like, hidden Australian memories that I don't think a lot of people are invested in just keeping around. It's not just the buildings, it's the Aussie iconography.
Yeah. I think you're right. There was, and that's where I was going back to, like, I think every city, I don't know about the rest of the world, but every city in Australia, up to about the 70s, maybe 80s, had their own sort of look and feel. And I think, like I said, it got blurred a lot with weekend trading and bigger companies coming in, at the shops and department stores. And then the footy became a national game. So we lost our sort of... footy was very territorial, you would never, if Richmond were playing Collingwood, you would dread having to go on the train station if you won, and that's just all gone. And so I think, and like even the suburbs, we talked about this. How long have you been here in Australia?
25 years.
Right, so that's long enough then. But 25, 30 years ago, you could go to almost, if you had a tourist friend that would come, you could take them to Brunswick Street, Austin Street, Greville Street, Fitzroy Street, Ackland, Chapel Street, and every suburb had its own feel.
Yeah,
and it had its own. To lose that. Had its own crowd, and if you want a bit of a bohemian thing, I'll take my friends down to Brunswick Street. But if you wanted some bit of glamour, you go to Chapel Street, and that was their Rodeo Drive and all that sort of thing. And now you drive through those, and they're just being put through a blender. And they really don't feel far different from each other.
It's the same with food. Like now you can get every type of food you can imagine, but it's not as satisfying anymore.
No.
Because it was the quest of going to get a particular meal from a particular place. It was the journey of going there and the culture of that place. And now you can kind of get everything anywhere.
Well, that was the point of, as kids, that we, mate, you'd wait till summer for summer fruit.
Yeah.
And it was a massive deal. And you had 4 weeks to eat watermelon and just smash it, and then... or apricots or something. They're in season now.
I remember doing that as well. I remember waiting for, like mangoes and shit.
Yeah.
Mum would just suddenly manifest.
And how good were they? And you'd just eat your body weight in them for 4 weeks because you won't be having these again. And then, so now, your kid wants apricots.
Go get them.
Go get them.
Yeah.
And,
it's a real shame. I think there is such a beauty in, like, the seasons are what they are.
Yeah.
And so is, wait, like, patience is underrated. And
there is no patience.
Yeah. But I mean, people aren't patient anymore. Like, even you get a notification, you have to check it.
Yeah.
You can't wait.
Yeah.
It has to be read in the moment as well. How did you actually learn? Because, like, these are incredibly realistic, like, majestic pieces of art. How did you actually learn? You said you were a sign writer, but how did you learn to draw, like, buildings?
So then I used to do murals and stuff. There's a bit of a crossover. My father was a builder. My brother is as well. And I would get dragged to work with my dad all the time, and my brother and I would. And so I learned how to read plans and understand scale and all that. And in the process, there was about 10 years where I did a lot of different things, but I used to design exhibition stands that would go around the world and all that. And so I'd sketch them and then I'd build it. If I could, the reason I would build them is because if I could sketch it, it could be made. And so these weren't just concept drawings. How do we make this thing now? So I always just had an understanding of that structure and how it looks and perspective and all that. I need to see it in my mind's eye. And people have said, mate, can you draw this building for me? And the library have asked me for 10 years to draw that. And I keep going there. And part of the problem is that it's all covered in trees and they're not deciduous. So you can't get a good look at it.
Right, yeah.
But I've got to stand there. And sometimes I just stand there and I can't see it. I can't see it. I can't see it. And when the one at Flinders Street Station, everyone knows that. And City Hatters actually as well. And I put in the post why I struggle with it. And it dawned on me one day, the reason I can't get a good grasp of it is all this shit in the way.
Yeah.
And then once I realised that's what was, because I kept trying to take photos around it. I go, well, that's not a good photo. That's not a good angle. And then I realised, mate, I'm going to have to draw it. So I need to see it in my mind's eye. And once I do, it's sort of somewhat photographic. It doesn't mean I go there in my head, I take a photo. Sometimes I've looked at these buildings, I could scroll you through my phone. And some buildings have got hundreds of photos where I've gone again. No, the sun's not right. And I can't see it. And then one day, I just sort of, right now I've got it. And I can almost go home and draw it from that. It's sort of like humming a note. Like you're humming a tune. And the minute you can hum it, you can play it.
It really is like a great snapshot of the city. Do you have other artists that you... Because you're not coming from a fine art background then.
No,
right?
no. Mate, look, the people... I'm not really inspired by the masters. Mine were Hanna-Barbera.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
More Drucker out of Mad Magazine and There's a
well, they're fantastic. They're fantastic artists.
Like Mary Blair, who did little children's, little golden books, and Fritz Freeling, Looney Tune stuff. Like I love Looney Tune backgrounds and stuff like that. If you have a look at those, that Chuck Jones period stuff, mate. They all cast shadows, and they've got real depth into the backgrounds,
And you've never worked as, like, I guess, side by side with, like, architects in any way?
Not directly, no.
That's interesting because, no.
I
highly doubt there's people in those fields that can do it the way you're doing it here.
No, we've dealt with architects. How much time have you got?
No, we got a little bit of time, like 15 minutes.
I've dealt with architects on certain things because we for years now, my cards and my art's been used for people with Alzheimer's and dementia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and there's a thing called reminiscence therapy, and what that is, a lot of people will they can't remember last year, 10 years ago, but they've got a strong memory of their childhood. And so we've used these cards, and people that have been cared for, and they'll show them that, and they just go back, and because they remember being 17 or 14, and I used to go there as a kid,
Really?
And so we've had architects hang my art in certain rooms because a lot of these people have lost the ability to read. So if they'll hang the Skipping Girl poster in the dining room, and they might hang the Luna Park poster in the TV room, in the games room or something. And so that people can remember.
Yeah, wow.
So it's quite interesting, the reminiscence thing.
I've never heard of it before.
No, but yeah, so for something like, I can't think of any of those ones there. Like we just, like that one, even that one, like the Sunny Boy one. I wouldn't even be surprised if that drink bottle I did the other day, if, people they might have parents with dementia or something.
Would use that one there.
They would use that, and it'll come to them. So we've been gonna follow that up, but man, I'm not a psychologist, and I just draw pretty pictures. So that there's a bit more to it than it does play an element there where people can sort of relive their childhood through those pics, Yeah. And it's not something we've promoted because I'm not qualified to. And you don't.
But other people are.
Well, and the reality is, I should get around to it, but it's not even about saying to someone, look, if you've got a parent, that's suffering dementia or that, you don't need to go and buy 50 of my postcards. Just plonk my Instagram page on an iPad and just flick through the photo, the images. Yeah. You don't need to spend any money. Just see what works and what doesn't. And we sent some posters off the other day for a gent that was going through that. And so we've worked with architects in that way. There seems to be something where, like, part of the problem with them as well is, so you might take a photo of Flinders Street Station or City Hatters, and if with someone with dementia, like I said, they need to relive that moment of when they're back in their teens.
Yeah.
So if you went and say, well, I'll go get, my grandmother a photo of Flinders Street Station, but if you take a photo of Flinders Street Station today, they almost won't recognise it. So much shit in the way, there's no clarity for them, and it can't be too simplistic, but it's got to be this balance of enough detail and colour, but not too much crap around it. Even if you took a photo of Flinders Street Station, you don't realise, but you take a photo of today, mate, there's 6 high-rise buildings behind it. That's not how your grandmother would have remembered it. She said, well, I don't know what are those buildings behind there.
But also, like, a place is the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
So even though we can sort of protect one building or two buildings, if you fuck up everything around it,
that's pretty much it.
Interrupted the atmosphere, the ambience. Like, if you go to Canada and you go to Gaswork or Gastown or whatever, it's just all, like, ancient, stuff. It's a feeling. It's like if you go to an amusement park and there's like a certain area.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem here. Like, if they get it, if they don't demolish it, they facade it or build above it or build right next to it. You go, mate, it needs a little bit of air to breathe.
Yeah.
I can't even seem to get a photo of it with all this without the shit in the way. Look what they're going to do to Young and Jackson's. So that's always been on the corner. And that illustration shows, low-rise shops each side. And they've dozed all those. They've put the underground rail in, and they're about to build like a 9-story to 10-story building around it. And it's just going to dwarf Young and Jackson's. It's going to have this big thing hanging around it and over it, you know.
I've never seen the battle between old and new more than yesterday when I was at Victoria Market.
Yeah.
Victoria Market, I don't know if you've sketched how it is now.
No,
It is the ultimate short little old school building.
Yeah.
And then behind it, there's a metropolis bigger than anything you've ever... I mean, not bigger, but for Melbourne, huge. And the juxtaposition is kind of pretty.
I took a photo. So I drew Mitchell House, which is on the corner of Elizabeth and Lonsdale. Art Deco building, beautiful building. And I illustrated and I thought, I've got to go back and take some photos of it. And I got there at 10:30 on a day like today, sunny. And there's, shadows are all cast over it. So I've just got to wait, I come back 45 minutes later, still in the shadows. But I waited 2 hours and I realised at that moment, I've got a 15-minute gap where the sun's going to break through, light the building. And then after that, it goes back behind. When you look at this, I think Mitchell House is 7 stories high. And it would have looked probably quite large in its day. It looks like it's so dwarfed. These massive high-rise behind it. But it's such a shame that we've created this windswept and especially now coming into winter, the shadows are long, the sun's low and the shadows are long, and a lot of these buildings don't even get sunlight anymore.
That's true. And Melbourne winters are they're not as bad as, it's not as cold as other places in the world, but Melbourne winters are depressing. If the sun's out, I enjoy being up in, I guess, Brunswick or Fitzroy and stuff like that, where you do have lower kind of buildings. So it's not quite suburbs. But it's, there is a certain soullessness to modern cities.
I mean, we were here 6 weeks ago and we were walking through, not far from here actually, corner of Russell and I don't know, Latrobe or something. And it was a day like today, but it was freezing and the wind was blowing through, an absolutely gale. And we walked up to Papagino's and we walked there, and the minute you got past Russell Street Police, mate, there was no wind. It warmed up by about 8 degrees, and I said, mate, it's just from that. We thought it was a cold, wintry day, and it wasn't.
No, but that's so true. There's architecture in Spain where they've built, I think it's Portugal or Spain, they've built the city in a particular manner where the wind doesn't hit you.
Yeah.
It's like a grid, it's like a labyrinth.
I'm certain this just tears straight up off Docklands or something, but it was just ridiculous. You're holding your hat, leaning into the wind. And we've walked up near, like I said, no further than Russell Street Police exhibition buildings, not a breath of wind, and about 8 degrees warmer. It was perfect.
Have you ever drawn people?
That's funny. People as in which way?
I've seen little figurines and toys and stuff. Have you ever drawn I guess a human?
No, it's funny. I never put people, very rarely put people in the...
I've seen a few where there's the walking of lots of people, but...
Originally I never put people in them because I didn't want to date. The minute you put a car or a person in it, it's the 30s, it's the 40s, it's the 60s. So I never did that. And then I drew Flinders Street Station, and I drew it originally with no people. And pre-COVID, it didn't matter. But this time, I drew it, and it just looked like the COVID lockdowns. I said, this building has never not had people. And I remember I went in there. I went and took photos.
Literally, it's never been empty.
No, it hadn't. And I've got photos. I went down there where there was no one there.
So did I. I did a walk along the trail, the river.
So did I.
And it was scary.
Yeah. And so I drew the thing. I go, I'm not putting people in. And you can't put 2 people in. It's Flinders Street Station.
Yeah, it's going to be packed.
So it's either got to be none or 50. And they take a long time. And I thought, mate, I drew this thing. And I said, this just looks like a COVID lockdown thing. It looked so sad.
It affects the tone, right?
It really did. It made it look... No one in Melbourne had ever seen that before. Yeah. And it looks so sad. I go, man, I'm going to have to put people in this. This is supposed to be a bustling 4 o'clock going home sort of thing. I can't dodge this. And then from then on, everything I've drawn since, even that one at the library, there's about 4 or 5 people without it. It either looks like a Sunday after... Well, it just looks like COVID. And putting people in it does help give it scale as well. So
for sure.
Like, the library because you know it, but those columns, you don't really realize how big they are until and those people are there's only a few and far between, but it's enough to give you the
sense of scale, But also, like, I mean, we've talked about how people put a lot of stuff in front of buildings, but actually when you walk around the city, they put, I don't know what it's called, they put like the rain cover.
Like the awnings.
Everywhere. So you actually can't look up and
you can't
see the city.
You can't.
These might be the only real ways to get it, or if you look at it from above, you can get that kind of perspective. But usually it's quite, and also people being on their phones so much when on public transport now, people aren't really looking at anything. So
that's true.
It is great too, and I'm saying that as a 29-year-old. But like, I go into any grilled, any fucking whatever. It doesn't matter where I'm at, unless it's a cinema.
That one I've done of Buckley and Nunn, like those buildings are still there, but you need to actually be on the other side of the road of Burke Street Mall and actually look up. Unfortunately, they've butchered. That's another problem with Melbourne. They've butchered all the shop fronts, the under awnings, which would have been equally as beautiful.
No, I've spoken to my friends about those before. I'd rather get wet than actually be able to see the city that I'm in.
Yeah, it is. You're
too comfortable and too considerate in like an artificial way.
But like that Mazda Cat, you got to be on the other side of the road. You got to look up at a certain angle, but otherwise you won't see it. It's
asking too much of modern day crowds, though.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, but that's awesome. And thank you for bringing these in. Thank you for coming in.
Oh, good, man.
Is there anything that you'd want to tell people listening? Any word of advice? Any cautionary tales?
No, I don't.
People sometimes don't have anything.
No, I don't pontificate about things. Mate, I just chip away, and like I said, a lot of it's driven by, it's really bitter. Like, I must admit, doing these is incredibly bittersweet. There's a happy place at the end, but there's a lot of anger and disappointment and resentment as you go through these photos. I mean, this is criminal what they've done. And you look at these photos and you think this shouldn't have been. This is just pure corruption, and the developers just laughed his way to the bank, and what we're left with. And I'll get older people, and they go, "Oh, I can't believe I used to go there as a kid." And I mean, this is what we're left with. 4 grainy old photos and some guy illustrating them, and that's all we've got.